is Rachel and I'm here to do my wrap up for the last 3 months. So I did a wrap up for the month of January because I'd read so many books, and then in February I only read 1 book, so I didn't really want to do a wrap up. And then in March I read 3 books. This month I've read quite a few books this month, to be fair. So I'd just been waiting and I just decided, like, once I've read a few books, I'll just do a wrap up then. That day is today. I've got quite a lot of books to talk about now. So we're gonna quick fire through it, and yeah, I'm gonna do it all in the order that I read them because I want to like split it up into the months that I read. The first book I have to show you is the only book that I read in February. I was listening to some books on audiobook, I was reading some books physically, and it was all a case of just I didn't finish them, so they couldn't actually be included. But the only book that I finished was My Brother's Name is Jessica by John Boyne. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. This is about a little boy and his family. So it's about the relationship that he has with his parents and the relationship he has with his sibling, who he believes to be his brother, who he's been brought up to believe is his brother. Through the book, we sort of realise that actually his brother realises that he's a woman and he's his sister and that his name is Jessica. And it's all about coming to terms with that and all of his family coming to terms with that. That's the basic premise of this whole book. I've seen some criticism of this book, that it's a book written about trans experiences but it's not written by a trans person. I understand that criticism. I understand the Own Voices criticism completely. However, I don't mind that John Boyne wrote this book. It's a really good book. It's a good book to get into the hands of children in schools. There are some trans kids at the school that I work at, and I think a book like this would really help with their like understanding of what's happening. There's like a little group of LGBT plus kids who hang out in the library at school. They all are like obsessed with Heartstopper at the moment, and it makes me so happy, the thought that they're watching a show that is so accepting of them. Like, it literally warms my heart. And this is a similar thing where I'm glad it's getting in their hands. To me, the problem is with publishing as a whole not putting its money and not putting its backing behind Own Voices books. I've read books by Own Voices trans people, and I've read books that are not Own Voices but have trans stories in them, and I don't really think that we have to devalue this book because somebody else hasn't put their money into the pocket of someone who's an Own Voices person writing a book like this. So yeah, that's my kind of basic thoughts about that. I thought I would just mention them first. Some things that I really liked about this book. Number 1, I liked that it was from the perspective of the brother. What's the brother called? Sam. I liked it was from the perspective of Sam because I felt like you really got a full arc of somebody who not necessarily didn't accept what was being told, because he didn't accept what was being told to him, but it's more because he was young and he wasn't able to understand what he was being told, and all he knew is, well, I'm getting bullied at school because my brother is now saying that he's a girl. Why doesn't he just not say that anymore? Like, that was his basic premise because he's a child. And I liked that we slowly saw that turn and slowly saw his understanding through talking to different people, through seeing the way that his parents behaved and reacted. I think that had a massive effect on him. And just, yeah, I really enjoyed those parts of the stories. The fact that it was from him and the fact that he was not perfect. He did some absolutely unforgivable things in this book. I just think the whole thing encompasses the idea of when you come out, you've been thinking about it for years. I remember, like, I stewed on it for so long. I don't think I came out to my parents until I was in university, but I had known, like, I'd had an inkling since at least maybe like 12ish. I'd had years and years and years to think about this and to consider it and all of those things. When you come out to someone, it often is that you've had so much time to think about it, and you come out to someone and you expect them to have the best response, and of course it'd be perfect if they did, but they haven't had the time that you've had. Some people might guess, some people might already know, but if you're in a situation where someone had no idea and you come out to them, you might not get the best reaction, and that's not necessarily a bad thing on their part. It's just that they haven't had all the time that you've had to get used to you coming out and that being a part of who you are. And I think this book encompassed that really well, because by the end she is accepted by all of her family, not in the best way. There are ways that things shouldn't have happened in this book. Thinking of one specific thing that the brother does that is not cool. It's a lot of confusion and a lot of not knowing how to deal with things, but by the time that they actually understand, they accept her completely and they love her completely. So I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars in the end, mainly because I felt like we could have had some perspective from Jessica. I think the fact that it's all done from the brother's perspective is great, and he does see everything that happens, but I think having that internal thing of what's actually going on would have been fantastic. However, I'm saying that it would have been great. I don't think I would have loved it completely if it had gone wrong, and obviously John Boyne himself is not a trans person. I'm not sure whether he would have been able to write that very well, and that's probably why he didn't decide to write it from Jessica's perspective, so I do understand that, but it did hold it back a little bit for me. I'm gonna move my little Lego dogs. Next, I'm gonna talk about 2 books that I read next in tandem, because they're both 4 stars, they're both by the same author, and they're both part of the same series. So in March, let's talk about the series that I started, and it was the Marionettes series by Katie Wismer. I read book 1, which is The Marionettes, and book 2, which is Wicked Souls, and I gave both of these 4 stars. I really liked this series. I thought it was amazing. It reminds me a little bit of House of Night, but not as cheesy. There's just the House of Night thing with like blood being a really big part of the story, and then similar to like True Blood in terms of like having different governments of vampires and things like that. And then I wouldn't really have a comparison on romance, to be honest, because a lot of those books, I'm talking about like dark fantasy, vampire, paranormal type of romances, and a lot of them don't have romances that are like the romance in this book, and that was part of the reason that I really liked these books. I thought the romance in them was actually really well done and quite mature, where I think a lot of those books had very immature romances and love interests. I'm going to just tell you about the premise for the Marionettes, because obviously I don't want to tell you about all of it, but this is basically about a girl called Valerie. She is a blood witch. There's a lot of different types of witches in this world, but she is a blood witch. When you're in training, you get paired with a vampire. So she gets paired with a vampire who is the love interest. It's all about their relationship with each other. There's something wrong with her as well. She feels very ill, and it's kind of about what's going on there. It's what you'd expect from a book where you had the main character as actually part of the paranormal world. So not like a Twilight where Bella wasn't part of the vampire world for the first few books. It's more like a House of Night, a Vampire Diaries, a Vampire Academy, like where the main character is part of that magical world that's going on. Yeah, I really enjoyed these, like a lot. I thought they were really, really good. I'm really enjoying them so far. The next book does come out this year, but I'm not sure when, and I'll definitely be picking it up. I finished this one and I'd got it for Christmas and I finished it. I remember like I asked my partner to get me this one because she's got Prime and I've not got Prime. And so it was next day delivery and I was texting her all day like, has the book come yet? Has the book come yet? Is the book there yet? Is the book there? When's the book coming? When's the book coming? And she was getting very, very annoyed at me. I read both of those and I really, really enjoyed them. And then we have the final book that I read in March, and that was my first Colleen Hoover, and it was It Ends With Us. I've never read a Colleen Hoover book before, but obviously I've heard of her for years. At the minute she's having quite the resurgence because of book talk, and so her books are in supermarkets and quite cheap. And so I decided to pick some of them up. And yeah, this is the first one I ended up reading. I gave this one 3.5 stars, which I think is a very fair assessment of this book for me. This book is very loved. I can kind of understand why, but also, so let's talk about it. So this is about a girl called Lily who falls in love with a man that she meets on like a rooftop. Ryle, that's it. She falls in love with a guy called Ryle, and they have a very tumultuous relationship, but there's also a relationship that she's had in her past that comes to be part of the present. We dip into the past and the relationship that she had, and we go back to the future with the relationship that she's currently having. Storyline wise, I really enjoyed this book. I found I didn't love the flashbacks as much at the beginning. Towards the latter end of the flashbacks, I did really enjoy them and I thought they really added to it. But at the beginning, they weren't really saying anything, but I think it was just a case of trying to lay some groundwork before it actually started, so I don't mind that too much. The main thing that I didn't like about this is, number one, Colleen Hoover has a really cheesy writing style at times, and it's annoying because she doesn't have it all the time, and she'll write 100 pages and it'll be fine and you'll really enjoy it, like you don't even notice the writing style, it's just passing you by and it's fine, and then there'll be a scene where it's so ridiculously cheesy. Like there's a scene where the guy literally gets on his knees and begs her to have sex with him in a very sincere way. It's not taking the piss. Just a hard no from me. Like that's just not what happens. No one would do that. I mean, it's moments like that, just really over the top cheesy things that just, it wouldn't happen. That annoyed me. In terms of the end of this and the whole like storyline, I really enjoyed it and I liked the way it was handled. I like the way it all came to a crux in the hospital at the end. I'm just going to say that because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. I thought that was a perfect moment for decisions to be made. I really liked Lily. I liked every character in this, to be honest. I even liked Ryle to an extent. I liked him as a person who, I thought he was a good person, and those parts of him that weren't good were very limited, but at the same time I couldn't completely get on board with him because he made no effort whatsoever to go to anger management, to go and actively go and just get better as a person. Like, yes, something bad's happened to you in the past, bad things have happened to everyone in the past, that doesn't mean your actions just have to happen sometimes. No, they don't. They don't have to happen. Actively make sure they don't happen, basically. All in all, I gave this 3.5 stars and I did enjoy it. It had its issues for me. Don't think I'm going to read the next one. I'm unsure. Obviously it comes out late this year and I would read it, but I've heard that it just goes back and rehashes a load of things that we already know happened. So I'm like, I'd read it to know where Lily is now and how things moved forward, but do I also want to read all that stuff that I already know what happened? Like, why are we going back in time again? Unsure whether I'm going to pick that one up. That's all the books that I read in February and March, so now we're on to April. So I've read a hell of a lot of books in April and I only have like 20 minutes left on my camera at the minute, so we're going to try and move quite swiftly. The first book I have to show you is Drama by Raina Telgemeier. This is a graphic novel and I have read quite a lot of Raina Telgemeier's books, and what I've realised is I really like her non-fiction books about when she was a child. I'm not as keen on her actual stories, so this one I ended up giving 2 stars in the end. It's just the normal art style that Raina does, which I really enjoy, but I didn't love this. It wasn't my favourite. I didn't like the main character that much. I didn't like the love interest situation. Oh my god, that annoyed me so much actually. I'm flicking through it to just remember because it's not even that memorable to remember to tell you. It was all just a bit forgettable and not great. So would really recommend her books from when she was a child, like Sisters, Smile, Guts. Guts is really good. I'd really recommend all of them, but not so much her stories. They're not my fave. So we had 2 stars for that one. Then we have 2 books that I listened to on audiobooks, they're not physical copies of. The first was London Calling, which I gave 1 star. Did not like this book. So this is a book by Claire Lydon. I like my lesbian romance type of books. I usually get them on audiobook. I'll listen to them at work or when I'm like on the bus or something. And they're very much the perfect read for those times where I'm not completely focused, so I don't want to read something that's going to drag me in too much, and they've got enough story to keep me there. I like it. So I've read a lot of like books by Jay. If you know, you know. They're great. Anyway, London Calling, one of those it is not. I'm annoyed that I have a physical copy of it at my mum and dad's as well, because that does not deserve to be a book that I have. I didn't like this book at all, and there's one main bit of it that really turned me off, which is that the main character, I'm just going to spoil it, the main character has a partner that she's with, and she also has an ex-partner and someone that she has slept with previously, but she's supposed to be so in love with the partner she's with now. There's this thing where she's in a club and it's for someone's hen do, I think, so a lot of the friends are there, and a girl that she's slept with before is there, and they're at the bar, and this girl does try to kiss her, but from her internal monologue of what's happening, she is enjoying it. She is not pushing her away, all this sort of stuff. And then afterwards, the girl she's with sees this and she goes and she like argues for her back and tells her how much she loves her. She's like, she made a move on me, blah 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 blah, and it's never, no one ever says anything. It's never brought up that actually, well no, you were enjoying it, you didn't stop it happening, you were as much a part of that kiss happening as she was, because you fucking wanted it to. Like, it just made me so angry because it just was never addressed again. And then the same thing happened with her ex, where her ex kept coming back into it and she kept just like seeing her and be like, oh yeah, let's talk. So this ex is from Australia and this girl used to live in Australia, and that's when they were together. And so she's brought her back Tim Tams from Australia and she takes them off her. And then she's like, I can't believe that she's trying to like have a relationship with me. I'm like, well, you've just took them Tim Tams off her. If she's your ex, cut all ties. Don't talk to her at all. Don't take anything off her. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just annoyed me. It was irritating, basically. So I gave that 1 star. I don't really think it had any redeeming qualities at all. I didn't like any character in it. No one stands out, no plot stands out. It was just very boring. I've got another Claire Lydon at home and I don't know whether I'm going to pick it up now because really did not enjoy this one. And then the next book that I listened to on audiobook was Kingdom of Ash, which is the last book in the Sarah J Maas Throne of Glass series, and this one I gave 3 stars. So I've really slowly been making my way through the Throne of Glass series. I've been reading them for years. My issue with them was that, number one, I didn't love them in the beginning, and so Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight I didn't love. I didn't think they were great, but Heir of Fire I really enjoyed, and after that I really enjoyed the books, except Tower of Dawn, because I can't stand Chaol and I just didn't enjoy the book. I didn't enjoy that we didn't move around, we just stayed with Chaol. So obviously in the book normally you'll like have some chapters from Dorian, have some chapters from Lysandra, you'll have some chapters from Aelin, and it moves around and it keeps it interesting, whereas that one didn't really move around as much. It just annoyed me, so I didn't finish it. When Kingdom of Ash came out, like, I've had it on my Audible for ages, like I'd say like at least a year, probably 2, because I think I got it when I was in Switzerland, but I was like, I can't read it because I've not read Tower of Dawn. I was like, get fucked if you think I'm going to go back and read Tower of Dawn. It's not happening. Fuck it, just don't read Tower of Dawn, who cares? There was some stuff in Kingdom of Ash that I didn't necessarily know, and I would have known if I'd read Tower of Dawn, but it became apparent very quickly, and so it was fine. I really enjoyed this as a finale to the whole series. I wouldn't say it was my favourite book. Like I said, Heir of Fire is my favourite book. I think that's the best one, and I think I gave that one 4 stars. So none of the books have hit 5 stars for me. They're not a 5-star series for me. They're a 4-star series for me. So yeah, this one got 3 stars. Probably an average rating for what I've given the books as a whole. I really enjoyed it, but there were just some issues that I had that annoyed me. So for instance, the whole thing with closing the gates that Aelin and Dorian had to do annoyed me. He didn't do anything. I don't understand why he was there. Like, it was such a thing that they both had to be there. And in the other book, it had been this huge scene where their magic had come together and no one had ever seen that much power before, and it made sense that together they had so much power that that's why they were both needed to go and shut these gates. And then when they went to shut the gates, it was only Aelin who did it. It wasn't the others. So that annoyed me a bit. I really enjoyed Aledan Larkin in this one. I think one of the things that bugs me in general with Sarah J Maas books, and with this series in general, is that every romance starts the same. And I think I realised this when I was reading Tower of Dawn, and that's one of the things that really turned me off. So everyone has this like snarky, biting at each other type of relationship that becomes like a hate to lovers type of relationship. It's like every single one. It's like Chaol has it with that girl when he's in Tower of Dawn, Aledan Larkin have it, Manon and Dorian, Dorian and Selena, Selena and Chaol. Everyone has the same type of relationship when they get together. Rowan and Aelin, like, so much. It annoys me. But I liked Aledan Larkin in this one because I felt like it wasn't just the generic type of story in this one. There was some ground into it and I really enjoyed it. The camera did cut off in the end, so that's probably why the angle looks different. And I can't remember what I was saying. We're just going to move on. But Kingdom of Ash, 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a good finale. It wasn't my favourite thing ever. The next book I read, I gave 4 stars. I don't know if it necessarily should get 4 stars, but it just made me feel very, very happy, so I gave it 4 stars anyway. And it is Hot Dog Girl by Jennifer Dugan. So this is a contemporary romance, and we follow a bisexual main character and her sort of trials and tribulations with, I want to say, her first proper outing into trying to date people. And so she works at a like fairground type of place that's been there for absolutely years, and she has a very sentimental connection to it. But they find out that this summer is the last summer and it's going to close, and she's very annoyed about it. And so we kind of follow that happening. It's like a massive part of her childhood and her past coming to an end, and so she's got all that going on at the same time as moving into this new realm where she is dating people and all that sort of stuff. I really liked this book. I didn't necessarily love her that much. What's she called? Yeah, I didn't necessarily love Lou that much. She had her issues. However, the friends to lovers in this is just, oh my god, it's amazing. There's somebody that she fancies and likes, and then there's somebody who she doesn't notice, but you notice the whole time you're reading it, because all of her descriptions of this person, every time she talks about them, you can tell she's completely infatuated with them, but she can't tell she's infatuated with them because she's friends with them, and she thinks it's just, oh, that's how I feel about my friend. And it's really cute, and they have such a cute little vibe and flirtation, and just, oh, I just love it. I really, really liked it. I think it doesn't necessarily deserve 4 stars. Probably like writing style wise, character wise, plot wise, it's probably a 3 star, but it just made me so, so happy, so I'm giving it 4 anyway. Next, I read the ebook of Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney. This is a short story about a woman who goes back to visit her father, who is in hospital, and she stays with someone who she used to live with. It is an older man. They sort of had a flirtatious relationship, but they were never together because there was such an age gap, and she was a student at the time, so age gaps feel bigger if one of you is a student, because I feel like there's a maturity level there that you've not quite got to yet. Nothing really ever happened properly. She comes to visit. It's really short. It's like 20 pages or something crazy like that, on an ebook anyway. It might even be shorter in a physical copy, but I really loved it, and it really packed a punch. And I think to hold my attention that much, to make me care about what was happening about the characters, and to have written it so beautifully, and for it to be so short, is just, yeah, that's such a talent. I think short story writing is such a talent if you can hold my attention that much. I gave this one 4 stars. I'm actually doing a vlog of me reading all of Sally Rooney's books at the minute, so I have actually filmed a little bit more of my thoughts about this book, so if you would like to hear them, that'll come out at some point. But I've only read this and one of her books so far, which will get mentioned on this list, so yeah, that vlog's not coming out yet, but it will at some point if you are interested in Sally Rooney. We have a book that I gave 3 stars, and that was The Henna Wars. This is, I'm not going to try and say a name because I feel like it would be insulting for me to try, because I just don't know how and I don't want to butcher it. But The Henna Wars, I really enjoyed this book. However, I really hated the main character, and I found her very difficult to deal with. I don't normally mind unlikable narrators, unlikable protagonists, but in this, I think she paints herself, what's she called, the main character? Nishat. She paints herself as such a victim, and I get it, there's some pretty serious and heavy topics going on in here, but in terms of like with her friends, like she thinks that everything is about her, and actually she doesn't sit and listen for a minute, and her friends sometimes are saying things that they're having the same experience as her, and they're trying to do the same things as her, and she's not listening at all because it's all about her. And so I found it really hard to get on board because she is very self-centered in this book. But I understand why at the same time. So this, sorry, I've not even explained what this is about. So this is about Nishat. At the start of this book, she comes out to her parents, and her parents aren't best pleased with her coming out. They kind of brush it under the carpet and say that she needs to make a better choice. So they treat this as her choice that she is making, and are hoping that she will make another choice that isn't going to bring shame on her family. There's a lot of nuance to this, and especially with her parents, there is this idea of them. They were originally from Bangladesh, and they've come over to, this is set in Ireland, which I wasn't expecting it to be in Ireland, and I really enjoyed. So it's set in Ireland. There's something about their relationship. I think they actually fell in love, it wasn't arranged, or there's something along those lines. And the fact that they live in Ireland as well and aren't practicing as much, the parents are kind of looked down upon by the people, and so they are being homophobic, but at the same time there's this other layer to it where they have had so much judgment on them that they really do want to protect the daughter from that, and they think that they are doing their best and protecting her by trying to make her choose a different way of life. That's a really interesting part of this book. I think the reason it's 3 stars is because all of the cultural stuff is really interesting in here, and the argument that's going on, the whole part of this, that's the Henna Wars. There's a relationship going on between her and another girl. I can't remember what the other girl's called. Flavia. And Flavia is Brazilian. So Flavia again is having the same sort of issues that Nishat's having, but as being someone who's from Brazil and coming over, and her traditions and that sort of thing. But Nishat doesn't see it that way. She only thinks about herself and her traditions being taken over, if you see what I mean. She's just very self-centered. There's a competition. I'm just taking the longest time to explain what this book is about. There's a competition, like a business competition, and they all have to come up with their own business, and Nishat wants to start a henna business, and Flavia also decides to start a henna business. So they're getting on at the start of this novel, and then they end up not getting on and being enemies because Nishat doesn't agree with Flavia doing henna. She thinks it's her culture's artwork and no one else should be able to do it, and it, like when white people at their school get the henna on, she's like, it doesn't look right because it's red but it's so like glaring on their skin, whereas on her skin, because she's from Bangladesh, it kind of looks beautiful because it's like darker skin with red. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that sort of thing. All the things I'm describing, it's all the cultural stuff. The cultural stuff is great. The relationship with her sister that she has is really interesting. I love seeing sisters that are very close in books. There's a lot of good stuff. However, I really didn't like the main character. So yeah, I ended up giving this 3 stars. It's a really good book. I would definitely recommend it. Next, we have my only 5-star of the last 3 months. It was quite the surprise, and it is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I was not expecting to have such a ridiculous amount of feeling and connection to this book, but I did. I love it very much. Like I said, I've been filming a video of me reading Sally Rooney books, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I adore this. It feels like a love letter to the bell jar and I just, oh my god, it's just amazing. I love it so much. Would really highly recommend. I am gonna say, I never heard anyone talk about trigger warnings with this book. It might just be that I didn't watch as many videos with people talking about it, but there is a lot of self-harm in here and it's very realistically portrayed. So I would just be mindful of that if you're going to go into it, because I found some of those sections difficult to read because they're so realistic. Not the easiest thing to read those parts if you have any sort of history with self-harm. Oh, but yeah, amazing book. Amazing. I love the characters, I love the writing style, I love the settings. I just, oh my god, everything. This is such a rich book. Like every other book, I love them, but there's something about a book that does the writing style, like the richness, the texture of description. Like I just, oh my god, I love this book. I've talked about it so much more in the other video that I don't want to talk about it too much here because I'm just going to be repeating myself. So yeah, 5 stars, absolutely love this book. Definitely going to be on like my favourite books of this year, I can already tell. I have not stopped thinking about it since I finished it. And then the last book I've read is for another video where I read some Colleen Hoover books, because I have quite a few Colleen Hoover books on my shelves, and it is Ugly Love, which I gave 2 stars and I did not enjoy very much. Yeah, this book is good and it has its redeeming things about it, but for the first half of it, it is extremely boring. There is one main plot and there is hardly any subplots going on. Characters are just a bit unbelievable. Like the main character is supposed to be training to be a nurse, so she's being a nurse and then she's got her job on the side to do like, you know, get experience sort of thing, and she's studying. She never once mentions that she is absolutely exhausted. She'll get back from work and she'll immediately like go and do something, like go to his place or well, it's always go to his place because, again, all of the settings are ridiculously limited, which makes it very boring as well. But yeah, like, she'll always be doing something. I'm like, my partner works for the NHS and she gets in off a shift, which number one is always like 12 hours or more. Number two, she always finishes late. And number three, she's always off the back of a lot of shifts. So she gets in and just like dies. She literally, like, I'll have me tea, she'll eat her tea, and then she just collapses and falls asleep no matter what. It's just, that's what happens because she's so tired. Just the portrayal of her being a trainee nurse and having all of this stuff that she was doing but still having so much energy and it not really impacting any of her life, like, it was just very unrealistic for me. That really annoyed me. Talked about it a lot in my other video, but the flashbacks I hate because they're not written properly. They're written in this really pathetic and childish way where the lines is a new line for every sentence. It just follows on from each other. I'll try and show you. So like this, it's not written properly, and towards the end it has sections where it's the other point of view and it is written properly and they work so much better, and it made me even more annoyed because I was like, why have you spent these chapters where you've not written it properly? So none of it really hits home because there's nothing there. There's nothing to latch onto. There's no writing there. There's no descriptions. It's just annoying. So didn't love this book. I gave it 2 stars. Part of the thing with it is there is some good stuff here that made it a worse book because there was good stuff there, and it's like you had some good stuff you were going on and this is what you got. Bit controversial because I know this is a very well loved book, but not my favourite at all. I would probably say my favourites were the Marionettes series and Conversations with Friends. My least favourite was obviously Ugly Love. Ugly Love annoyed me a lot, and maybe Drama as well. Oh, and what was the other one I gave 1 star? Oh, London Calling. No, London Calling is the worst. Bottom of the pile. Did not enjoy that at all. They were all the books that I read in February, March and April. Thank you very much for watching. If you've read any of these books and want to talk to me about them in the comments down below, please do, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!